Hello, everybody. I am the Warped Adventurer. Today we're back with another deck tech. This time it's for Vadrik Astral Archmage. This is clearly an instant and sorcery deck, and you like to cheapen your instants and sorceries. That way you can cast them super cheap for big explosive spells and cast a whole bunch of them in one turn and hope to take the game as quick as you can. Well, not necessarily quick as you can, but very, very explosive turn. I think we will start with 24 lands. Well, 34 lands. Sorry, not 24. I run 34 lands in this. Um, with Command Tower as one of the non basics, Soaring Sea Cliff as sort of one of the alternate win cons with this is just to kill people with commander damage because you're going to end up with a massive Vadrik. And so enters tapped, and when enters, target creature gains flying till end of turn. So giving him a little bit of evasion to hope to be able to maybe punch someone in the face. Then we got Myriad Landscape for early game ramp to set up for your next turns. You got Karn's Bastion, tap Tadiculus, or you can pay for a tap to proliferate. That way you can start adding more counters onto Vadrik and build them up without having to wait for night and day. Then you got Hall of Oracles, tap Tadiculus. You could pay a colorless and tap it, add 1 mana of any color. Or you could tap it to put a 1/1 counter on target creature, activate only as a sorcery, and only if you've cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn. So, let's move on to some ramp. So, starting with um, some obvious ones, we got Replicating Ring. Tap, add a mana of any color. Upkeep, put a night counter on it. If it has 8 or more, remove all of them and create 8 copies of this, except they don't have that ability. Um, and Component Pouch. Tap, remove a counter from it, add 2 mana of any of different colors, and tap, roll a d20, 1 through 9, put 1 component counter on it, 10 through 20, put 2 component counters on it. So, more ramp and adding more mana to your mana pool in order to be able to cast a bunch of stuff. Then we got Gilded Lotus. More mana, cost 5, tap, add 3 mana of any one color. Then we got Astral Cornucopia. Enters with X charge counters on it. Tap, choose a color, add 1 mana of that color for each charge counter on Astral Cornucopia. And considering there is a little bit of proliferation in here, I figured might as well pop that in here, as it's going to give you more and more mana over time. Then we got Invasion of Segovia, and it's a battle. So when it enters, you get 2/1/1 blue Krakens with trample, and it has 4 defense counters. The other side, you have Caetus C, Tyrant of Segovia. He's a 3/3. Non-creature spells you cast have Convoke. Since most of what you're casting are non-creatures, most spells you cast, you could tap your creatures to help pay for it. And at the beginning of your end step, untap up to 4 target creatures. That way you almost always have the ability to cast your counter spells. And for an obvious choice, Jessica's Will. Choose one. If you control a commander as you cast the spell, you may choose both. It costs 3. Add 1 mana. We'll add 1 red mana for each card in target opponent's hand. And exile top 3 cards of your library. You may play them this turn. So basically, you cast it on an explosive turn to add a whole bunch of mana, maybe copy it a few times, that way you just get a mass amount of mana and start casting spells, which this deck loves to do. Sorry for the jump scare there, I just threw my hands in your face. Then we got a little bit of fun with Wandering Archaic. He's now part of ramp, but I wasn't sure where to put him. Whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery spell, they may pay 2 colors. If they don't, you may copy that spell, choose new targets for the copy. He's fun, he's nice, he's in here so you can cast more instants and sorceries. Possibly. And his other side is pretty bad. If you're casting that side, you're in a sad spot. Or your opponents aren't casting things and perhaps it's just free. I don't know. You got Urabrask. This is the why am I blanking on what they're called? Right, this is the Saga Urabrask, and so he's a 4/4 for a strike. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Urabrask deals 1 damage to target opponent and add 1 red to your mana pool. Pay 1 red, exile him, then return onto the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. Activate only as a sorcery, and only if you've cast 3 or more instants and sorcery spells this turn. His other side, first one is, well, it's called the Great Work. First one, the Great Work deals 3 damage to target opponent and each creature they control. The second one is create 3 treasures, and the third one is until end of turn, you may cast instant and sorcery spells from any graveyard. If a spell cast this way would be put into a graveyard, exile instead. Exile the Great Work, then return it to the battlefield transformed. And so basically, this side, he ramps you up whenever you cast spells to keep your turns going. And if you're casting like 1 cost spells, well, 1 mana pip spells, which are normally just the colored pips, that means Urabrask will give you the mana back and shoot an opponent, so he could eventually kill someone. Then is a possible game ender is Gutter Snipe. He's a 2/2. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Gutter Snipe deals 2 damage to each opponent. So with the amount of instants and sorcery spells you're casting, it's quite easy to start pinging your opponents to death for each one. So now let's save the win cons for last. Let's do the tutor. The tutor for this deck is Step Through. It costs 5. Return 2 target creatures to their owner's hands. That's not the tutor. It has wizard cycling, so you can pay 2 colors and discard this card. Search your library for wizard card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. So fetches any wizard in your deck, and you have quite a few pretty nice wizards. Just for instance, you got Niv Mizzet the Firemind as one of your win cons. You have Gandalf the Grey. You have Tarlin Sky Summoner, Splashy Spellcaster, Gale Waterdeep Prodigy. You get the point. And Gandalf, Friend of the Shire. Point is, you have plenty of things to fetch with Step Through, and so it's nice. I wasn't sure where to put him either. Gandalf, Friend of the Shire. He's a 2/4 flash. You may cast sorcery spells as though they had flash. And whenever the ring tempts you, if you control a creature other than Gandalf, Friend of the Shire as your ring bearer, draw a card. Basically, you're never gonna be tempted by the ring. Maybe once. There might be one thing in here that does the ring tempts you. But besides that, you won't be seeing it. It's just in there so you can cast sorcery spells at flash speed. I know there's better versions, but I don't care. Next we have Narset's Reversal for a fun little card. Copy target instant or sorcery spell, then return it to its owner's hand. You may choose new targets for the copy. These are the counter spells, and so I'm saying that's a counter mainly because you do it on somebody else's spell, and then you can do whatever it is that was going to happen, so it's helpful. Now for another pseudo counter spell, you have Brutal Repulsion. Costs 2 colors, a blue and a red. Choose one or both, return target spell, or creature to its owner's hand, or brutal explosion, explosion. I don't know. Deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If that permanent would be put into graveyard this turn, exile it instead. Just nice for a counterspell. Could be temporary removal. Could be multiple sets of removal. It's quite nice to have that multiple things you can do with it sort of thing. Next we got actual counter spells. Speaking of counter spells, counterspell. Counter target spell. Costs 2 blue. It's a pretty understandable card right there. No flavor text, no reminder text, nothing. Just counter target spell. Next up is Saw It Coming. Counter target spell, and you could foretell it, and you could cast it for 2 for if it's foretelled. And you cost 3 normally. And as long as you have Vadrik out, you can cast it for 1 blue if it's foretold, whatever. And last but certainly not least is Whirlwind Denial. For each spell and ability your opponents control, counter it unless its controller pays 4 colorless. So basically, if there's a whole bunch of stuff on the stack and you just need it all gone, cast Whirlwind Denial after your opponents have spent all their resources trying to handle whatever you're trying to do. You Whirlwind Denial all of it, and then you get all of what you were just doing. It's a really nice way to just say, this stack needs to be cleaner, and then you clean it. Yeah, you're there. Moving on to protection. First, we have Misstep. Costs a blue and a colorless. Creatures target player controls don't untap during that player's next untapped step. So basically, you just are able to tap, make sure that your opponent, if like your opponents have enough creatures out to kill you next turn, and they just swing at someone and kill them or whatever, just cast Misstep and they won't untap. Gives you some time to respond. Next up, we have Propaganda. Creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 colorless for each creature they control that's attacking you. Pretty understandable. You see it in most blue decks. Let's move on, shall we? To copying. In the future, I'm probably going to add more things that copy, because this deck tends to love that sort of thing. Regardless, we got Ernicus's Vile Duplication. Create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, except the token has flying, and it isn't legendary if that creature is legendary. I chose that one because there's a lot of legendaries in here that I want to copy, and so having 2 Ovikas, or having 2 Baral and Kari Zevs, or even just having 2 Vadriks early game can help a lot. So yeah, moving on to card draw. First, we have Chemist's Insight. Costs a blue and 3 colorless, draw 2 cards. As Jumpstart, you may cast a spell from your graveyard by discarding a card in addition to its other costs. Exile this card. So basically, pay with Vadrik out and with your engine going, pay 1 blue, draw 2 cards, and you can pay another blue to draw another 2 cards and discard a card. I don't know about you, but 2 blue to draw 4 cards and discard a card is really good. Moving on, you have Quarrel's End. Costs red and 2 colors. Additional cost to cast, pitch a card, draw 2 cards, and create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. Again, more card draw. Create you some extra soldiers for your convoke. Next, we have Behold the Multiverse. You can foretell it for 2, but generally you won't because Vadrik can handle cheapening it himself. So if Vadrik's out and going, 1 blue, scry 2, draw 2 cards. Normally costs 4. It's really nice. Again, this deck draws a whole lot of cards, fills its hand, keeps its turn going. So you're going to see a decent amount of card draw stuff. Next up, you have Contact Other Plane. Roll a d20. 1 through 9, draw 2 cards. 10 through 19, scry 2, then draw 2. And if you roll a nat 20, scry 3, then draw 3. And it costs a blue and 3 colors, so if Vadrik's out and going, as I said, 1 blue at minimum, draw 2 cards. Really nice. Moving on, you have quite an explosive one, Keep Watch. Costs a blue and 2 colors. Draw a card for each attacking creature. Doesn't need to be attacking you. Doesn't need to be doing much of anything except for attacking. And it's an instant, so you just cast it when someone's going wide, draw a whole bunch of cards, probably find the answer, and yeah, it's super nice. Then we have Aminato's Augury. Costs 2 blue and 6 colorless, but with Vadrik out, just costs 2 blue. Exile the top 8 cards of your library. You may put a land card from among them onto the battlefield, and until end of turn, for each non-land card type, you may cast a card of that type from among the exiled cards without paying its mana cost. So basically, sorcery, instant, enchantment, artifact, creature, battle, planeswalker, you have all those in here. So you have so many different things you can hit. Yeah, it's super helpful. Next up, we have Fists of Flame. This is technically one of the win cons, as like maybe you're swinging with Vadrik and you just drew a bunch of cards this turn, like maybe you just casted a Keep Watch or something and drew a whole bunch of cards. Maybe you're swinging wide somehow, I don't know. Or you casted some spell, drew a whole bunch of cards, and now you're attacking with Vadrik. They decide not to block. He's just a 3/4 right now. You cast Fists of Flame and draw another card, and then buff him up a whole bunch, and you might just kill them with commander damage right there. So it costs a red and a colorless. It's an instant. Draw a card, and until end of turn, target creature gains trample and gets +1/+0 for each card you've drawn this turn. If anything, you cast a targeting Vadrik and draw a card, and it just buffs him up enough to make other spells cheaper this turn. Super nice. And as you expect to see in Vadrik, there's going to be a decent few X costs. So you got Transcendent Message. It has Convoke, so your creatures can help cast it. Cost 4 blue and X colorless. Draw X cards. Obvious why it's in there. Next up, you have Wizard class. And, yeah, I feel like that one's pretty clear. First level, you have no maximum hand size. Level 2, draw 2 cards. Level 3, whenever you draw a card, put a 1/1 counter on target creature. And you can start buffing up Vadrik for every card you draw. Which makes all... So basically, for every card you draw, your instants and sorceries cost 1 less to cast. Think of it that way, and it's extremely good. First up, we have Rise and Shine. I'm going to just explain it as its overload. So, each non-creature artifact you control becomes a 0/0 artifact creature. Put a 4 1/1 counters on it, on each artifact that became a creature this way. So you're gonna be creating. Well, you have a decent number of non-creature artifacts, and maybe you create a few treasures, maybe a few clues or whatever, and then you turn them all into 4/4s. Pretty good. Next up, we have Rise from the Tides. Costs a blue and 5 colorless, but with Vadrik out, think of it as just pay a blue. Then create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token for each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard. So after just dumping a whole bunch of instants and sorceries in your graveyard after a long turn, pay a blue and just create a whole bunch of 2/2 zombies. They're tapped, but that's okay. Next turn, go wide with them or convoke them. Many options. This is kind of a win con, but also it's really good to have dump out some blockers. Ovika Enigma Goliath. He costs 7. He's a 6/6 flying with Ward 3 and pay 3 life. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create X/1/1 red for Phyrexian Goblin creature tokens, where X is the mana value of that spell. They gain haste until end of turn. So yeah, almost everything you're casting are non-creature spells, so you're going to be dumping out goblins and swinging wide with them. So this deck can swing wide, it can shoot people to death, it does everything. Now we're doing the copies, because this deck is secretly a copy deck. First up, we have Dual Strike. 2 red, when you cast your next instant or sorcery spell of converted mana cost 4 or less this turn, copy that spell, you may choose new targets for the copy. Pretty simple. Next up, we have Display of Power. This spell can't be copied, for 2 red and a colorless. Copy any number of target instant and or sorcery spells. You may choose new targets for the copies. So after just having all these stuff on field ready to copy, you cast Display of Power, copying all of them, and then go off. Next up, we'll do the 2 Chandras in here. First, we have Chandra the Firebrand. She costs 4. She's a Planeswalker with Loyalty starting 3. She has a +1 ability, deal 1 damage to target creature or player. Meh. Or -2. When you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. And -6 is deal 6 damage to each of up to 6 target creatures or players. You're never using her ult, and you're only using her up to be able to use her -2 again. So basically, copy spells, maybe ping some weaker creatures. Next up is Chandra Hope's Beacon. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. This ability triggers only once each turn. She is +2. Add 2 mana of any combination of colors, so she can add a little bit more mana for you to keep your turn going. Or +1, exile the top 5 cards of your library till end of turn. You may cast an instant or sorcery spell from among the exiled cards. And -X, she deals X damage of up to each of up to 2 targets. If you're down to 2 players and she's at high enough, you just minus her down, shoot them both for a bunch, and then finish them off with Gutter Snipe or something. So she has her uses. So first we have Lutri the Spell Chaser. 3/2 Flash for 3. Elemental Otter. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. Pretty clear. It's a creature, so it won't be reduced by Vadrik. Next up is Dualcaster Mage. 2/2 Flash. When it enters the battlefield, copy target instant or sorcery spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Notably, most of the time it will be your own spell, but it doesn't have to be. If someone just casted some explosive spell that you want as well, cast Dualcaster Mage and copy it yourself. Say, I also want to do that. Next up is Complete the Circuit. Convoke, so your creatures can help cast it, costs a blue and 5 colorless. You may cast sorcery spells this turn as though they had flash, and when you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell twice. You may choose new targets for the copy. That one is a lot of fun, because if you use, say, Chandra Hope's Beacon and Chandra the Firebrand to both copy Complete the Circuit, and Dualcaster Mage and Lutri to copy Complete the Circuit, then, I don't know, then you cast some explosive spell like Jeska's Will, and then you also cast the Display of Power to copy all of them. Then you just copied the Jeska's Will probably like 20 times, 15 to 20 times. It's gonna be explosive. So Complete the Circuit is really nice because it copies it twice instead of once. So copying it with your other copy spells means it will double the amount of copies you can do. And it just be ridiculous with it. Next up, you have Gandalf the Grey. 3/3 for 5. Well, 3/4 for 5. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, choose one that hasn't been chosen. You may tap or untap target permanent. Gandalf the Grey deals 3 damage to each opponent. Copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy, and put Gandalf the Grey. Put Gandalf on top of its owner's library. So he'll cycle through them. You can copy your spells more, which, as you can tell, you love to copy spells in this deck. Next up, we have Tomb of Horrors Adventure. 6 for 4/4. When it enters battlefield, you take the initiative. That's just a dungeon. Moving on to her next ability, or his. I don't know. I think it's a her. When you cast your second spell each turn, copy it. If you've completed a dungeon, copy that spell twice. You may choose new targets for the copies. And that also does creatures or enchantments or artifacts or anything. Hence why Tomb of Horrors Adventure is in here. A lot of fun to just copy, and do a lot of copy, and maybe copy some more. And then you have Invasion of Arcavios. Enters battlefield, search your library for an instant or sorcery spell, or search your graveyard for an instant or sorcery spell. Put in your hand, then shuffle your library. And it has 7 defense counters. Its backside is Invocation of the Founders. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand, you may choose new targets Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand, you may copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Every single instant or sorcery spell you're casting from your hand, you're copying. Yes please, more. Moving on to cast triggers. You have Baral Kari Zev. 2/4 for Strike Menace. Whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery spell each turn, you may cast a card. You may cast a spell with lesser mana value that shares a card type with it from your hand without paying its mana cost. If you don't, create First Mate Ragavan, a legendary 2-red monkey pirate creature token. It gains haste till end of turn. Basically, you're either creating Ragavan. Well, you're either casting an additional spell for when you're casting your first instant or sorcery, or if you've already done that, then you create a 2/1. Well, if you can't do it, then you create the 2/1. Next up is Tarland Sky Summoner. He's 4 for 2/2, Merfolk Wizard. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 2/2 blue drake creature token with flying. Basically, can create you some blockers in the air, or it can eventually overwhelm your opponents in the air. Again, you have multiple different ways to win, and some of it is just by swinging wide with tokens, which I think is funny in an instant and sorcery deck. Next up, you have River Song's Diary. Whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell from their hand, exile it instead of putting it into the graveyard as it resolves. At the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 4 more cards exiled with River Song's Diary, choose one of them at random. You may cast it without paying its mana cost. Notably, after you cast it, it goes from exile back to the graveyard. And so, just whenever someone casts a spell, you just continue cycling them under River Song's Diary. Now, notably, costs 3 colors, not 4, sorry. River Song's Diary is better than this next one, which is Rod of Absorption. Whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, exile it instead of putting it into a graveyard as it resolves. You can pay X colors and sacrifice Rod of Absorption. You may cast any number of spells from among the cards exiled with Rod of Absorption with total mana value X or less without paying their mana costs. Basically, you kind of have to pay their mana costs with Rod of Absorption. You just don't have to worry about their mana color. But with River Song's Diary, you should just cast them for free, but they're random. So you don't get to choose. So I guess there's a trade-off there. Next up is Splashy Spellcaster. 2/4 for 4. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a sorcerer roll token attached to up to one other target creature you control. I won't worry about explaining rolls as they're rather new, and even new players will probably understand them by now. Moving on, we have Gale, Waterdeep Prodigy. Cost 3 for 1/3. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand, you may cast up to one target card of the other type from your graveyard. If a spell cast from your graveyard this way would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. Basically, when you cast your Transcendent Message, you could also cast Aminatu's Augury. Keep in mind, Vadrik will continue reducing the mana cost of spells even from the graveyard. Next up, board wipes. You only got one. It is Hercule's Final Meditation. Costs 3 more to cast if it's not your turn. Costs 3 blue and 4 colors, 7 if it's on somebody else's turn. It's an instant. Return all non-land permanents to their owner's hands. End the turn. Basically, you're going to be casting this on your opponent's turn almost every time because you don't want to end your own turn. And if things hit the fan, then you can basically pay 3 blue to cast it and clear the board of all the issues, and do it on their upkeep before they draw their card, so that way it just ends their turn before they get to do anything. Next up, life gain. We have Kraken's Eye, which it costs 2 colors for an artifact. Whenever a player casts a blue spell, you may gain 1 life. You cast a lot of blue spells, so you're going to gain a lot of life over the game. Always nice to have life gain in any kind of deck. That's my opinion, and it just gain yourself some life, and you might be able to outlive your opponents. Moving on, we have Tablet of the Guilds. 2 colors. As it enters the battlefield, choose 2 colors, always blue and red. Whenever you cast a spell, if it's at least one of the chosen colors, you gain 1 life for each of the chosen colors it is. So if it's blue, like if you cast Tablet of Guilds turn 2, cast Vadrik turn 3, then Tablet of Guilds will gain you 2 life because Vadrik is both blue and red. Moving on, we have Staff of Completion. 3 colors, tap, pay 1 life, destroy target permanent you own. So if someone steals your cards, you can tap this to blow it up. Tap, pay 2 life, add 1 mana of any color. Or you could tap, pay 3 life to proliferate. Or you could tap, pay 4 life to draw a card. And you could pay 5 colors to untap Staff of Completion. Super nice card. The proliferation is the main reason it's in here. But if someone steals Vadrik, which have had happen before, tap the staff and blow him up to get him back to your command zone and recast him. Or you can add mana with it, or draw cards. And untapping it is really nice. Moving on, you got removal. You got some fun removal here. You got Red Sun's Twilight. Pay 2 red and X colorless. Destroy up to X target artifacts. If X is 5 or more, for each artifact destroyed this way, create a tokenless copy of it. Those tokens gain haste. Exile them at the beginning of the next end step. So basically, you blow up a bunch of issue artifacts, and until end of turn, you get token copies of them if you paid 5 or more. For X, you can just name what X is, and then Vadrik can reduce that number. And then you pay the rest of the mana. So it's super nice. Next up, we got Temporal Fissure. Return target permanent to its owner's hand, and has store, so you copy it for each spell cast before this turn. That can be a total blowout, and if you want to be extremely mean, if someone's been a dick the whole game, then you can get them back by casting this and just bouncing all of their lands back to hand and maybe all their issue cards. And they're just like, why'd you do that? It's like, well, you're a dick, so I'm going to be a dick. Welcome to the party. Next up, you have Scour from Existence. Normally, I'd say don't play this card. It costs 7. It's an instant and exile target permanent, but normally it's not worth it. But Vadrik can reduce it to costing 0. So it's a 0 cost instant that exiles any permanent you want it to. That is the best removal. It's just best if it's in Vadrik. And finally, we're moving on to the game enders. First up, we have Twin Flame. It costs a red and a colorless. Strive. This spell costs 3 more for each target beyond the first. Keep in mind, Vadrik can reduce the cost of Strive. Choose any number of target creatures you control. For each of them, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it has haste. Exile those tokens at the beginning of the next end step. So, basically, if you want like a copy of Gutter Snipe, you cast this on like the first spell you cast, and so maybe copy it a bunch and get a whole bunch of Gutter Snipes and kill people that way. Or you just start dumping out a whole bunch of your fun people. Now, this is a card. This is one that can be ridiculous, but normally it won't. Keep that in mind. Moving on, for a similar one, you have Harness by Force. Costs 2 red and 1 colorless. And it also has Strive. Costs 3 more to cast for each target beyond the first. Gain control of any number of target creatures until end of turn. Untap those creatures, they gain haste until end of turn. And if you just pay like 10 mana, you gain control of like 9 creatures and just go wide that way. Stuff like that. Next up, you have Jaya's Immolating Inferno. Costs 2 red and X colorless. It's a legendary sorcery, so you can only cast it if you control a legendary creature or planeswalker. Jaya's Immolating Inferno deals X damage to each of up to 3 targets. It does not say divided, it just says the 3 targets. So you choose all 3 of your opponents, name if like you just if you just casted Fists of Flame with a whole bunch of cards drawn this turn, you cast Jaya's Immolating Inferno and name 40 or something ridiculous like that. And choose each of your opponents and boom, kill all 3 in one shot. Or got Aetherflux Reservoir. Costs 4 colorless. This is the nuke. Whenever you cast the spell, you gain 1 life for each spell you cast this turn. And you pay 50 life. Aetherflux Reservoir deals 50 damage to target creature or player. So, you're going to be casting a lot of spells. And so eventually you're gaining an absurd amount of life. And if you have Tablet of the Guilds out and Kraken's Eye, it's going to get absurd. And then you just start, pay 50 life, shoot you out of the game. Pay 50 life, shoot you out of the game. And, yeah, it gets ridiculous. Now we're going to do the things people like to call fireballs. You got Volcanic Geyser, costs 2 red, X colorless. Volcanic Geyser deals X damage to target creature or player. And you copy it, you do that sort of stuff, whole bunch, shoot people in the face for a lot. You got Fireball, 1 red, X colorless, pay 1 colorless for each target beyond the first. So it's kind of Strive, but not really. Fireball deals X damage divided evenly, rounded down among any number of target creatures and or players. Basically, you're just going to be targeting one player and maybe copying it to target the other 2 as well. And you just shoot people in the face for enough to kill them. That's what you do with the fireballs. That's why they're win cons. Then you got Disintegrate. Costs 1 red, X colorless. Deals X damage to target creature or player. That creature cannot be regenerated this turn. If the creature is dealt lethal damage this turn, remove it from the game. Uh, that last part doesn't really matter, using it to kill players, but if for some reason you need to use it to kill a creature, that creature is gone. You don't have to worry about it, unless it's a commander. In which case, good luck, friendo. Next up, you have Lava Axe. 1 red, 4 colors, deals 5 damage to target player. This one you need to copy it a whole bunch, but after you do that, you just start shooting people in the face for 5 per copy. And if you have Gutter Snipe, you ping people as well, and it can get out of hand. Next up, you have Ground Rift. Target creature without flying can't block this turn. It has Storm. So after a huge explosive turn, you cast it. Make sure all creatures your opponents control can't block this turn, and you swing Vadrik to kill one player and start killing players that way. Again, there's alternate ways to win. You don't need to win just by pinging people to death like a normal spellcaster deck. Next up, you have Niv Mizzet the Firemind. He's 4/4 flying. Whenever you draw a card, he deals 1 damage to any target and tap to draw a card. And he costs 2 colors, 2 blue, and 2 red, so 6. He's really nice just because all those cards you're drawing, you just start shooting your opponents and eventually kill them that way. However, you don't have enough cards in your deck in order to kill all the players at the table with Niv Mizzet. So he's not going to win you the game unless it's late game. Then if their life totals are low enough, you could kill them that way. Next up, you have Alchemist's Gambit. Cleave, you may cast the spell for its cleave cost. If you do, remove the words in square brackets. Take an extra turn after this one. During that turn, damage can't be prevented, and this part is in square brackets. At the beginning of that turn's end step, you lose the game. Exile Alchemist's Gambit. So you only ever cleave it unless you just never cast it uncleaved. You always cleave it, or else you lose the game. So what you do is all those copy spells. So first you have Invasion of Arcavios out on its enchantment side. Then you have Tomb of Horrors Adventure out, and you already have the dungeon complete. Make sure to do that. And you already have Gandalf the Grey out, and you have both Chandras out. You want to activate Chandra the Firebrand, so you copy the next instant or sorcery spell you cast this turn. Then you cast Complete the Circuit, so all of those are going to copy it. Then, in response to that, you cast Dualcaster Mage to copy it, Lutri Spellchaser to copy it. Then with all that on the stack, you cast Dual Strike to copy the spell after the Complete the Circuit, while all of that is still on the stack. That way, those don't copy Dual Strike. So, what happens there is for each of these copies, you're going to copy twice. So, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. You're going to copy the spell 19 times. Then you cast Alchemist's Gambit. Then, with all those on the stack, you cast Display of Power to copy all of them again. And so that's over like 20 extra turns. And yes, Vadrik gets enough mana to be able to do all that. That's why he's absurd. And that's why Alchemist's Gambit is in the win cons. Because you take 20 extra turns, whoever, they're just dead. There is no way they're living through 20 turns. Even if you have nothing else to do other than keep swinging Vadrik, at that point he's probably going to be so big they're just going to die eventually. That is my Vadrik Astral Archmage deck. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, consider subscribing, and if you liked it enough, maybe even like the video. Now, this has been the Warped Adventure, and I hope you all stay safe, stay healthy. Peace out.